Today we're going to be talking about linear equations, and more specifically, how we can solve them in Python using KiwiCalc. Linear equations are equations that are composed only of linear expressions. Linear expressions are expressions that only contain addition and multiplication by a constant. Let's take a look at the official documentation of KiwiCalc. We see that we can solve a linear equation using the solve linear method. The method accepts a string that represents the equation as a parameter. It can also accept as a second parameter a collection of the variables inside the equation. However, this is not mandatory, and it will only make things faster. It will work anyways. Let's take a look at this example. First of all, we need to import the solve linear method from KiwiCalc. Later on, we define a linear equation, a string that represents it anyway. The beautiful thing about it is that we don't need to define a set of algebraic expressions in order to provide it to the solve linear method. We only need a string. This is very simple and very straightforward. After we define the linear equation string, we can plug it into the solve linear method and save it in a variable, result for instance, and print it out. Okay, so let's start to code. First of all, we need to import the solve linear method from KiwiCalc. Now we want to define our equation. So let's create a string, linear equation, and let's pick a rather simple equation. We don't need to complicate it so much for an example. Now let's provide it to the solve linear method. And let's print the result. And let's see what we've got. And we got 3. And we can actually verify that this is the correct result by subtracting 6 from both sides of the equation. And we are left with 2x equals 6, and then we just divide by 2, and voila, 3. So this actually works, and this is a very simple approach. So we've seen earlier how we can use the solve linear method in order to solve linear equations. But if we want to execute some more sophisticated features, we can actually use the linear equation class. Basically, we would just create a new linear equation object to represent the equation, and then we would have a lot of cool properties and methods. We can see the properties of the linear equation object in here. First of all, we would have an equation property, which is the string that represents the linear equation. We would have the list of variables inside the equation, the number of variables. We can also fetch the first and second sides of the equation. For instance, if our equation is 2x equals 6, the first side is 2x and the second side is 6. We also have a solution property, which is the solution of the equation, which is obviously the most important property of this class. And the variable dict property is actually not so relevant, so I won't get into it. So this is how you can create a new linear equation object. You just need to provide it with a string that represents the equation, and optionally also a list of variables that are in the equation, but this is not mandatory. This just speeds up the process. You can fetch the solutions of the equation in 2 different approaches. First of all, you can just use the solution property as discussed earlier. You can also use the solve method. You can choose any of these approaches, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes we're just unable to solve the linear equation. For instance, if we have a single equation, but 2 variables in the equation, there are infinite solutions, so we can't reach a solution, a single solution. In these cases, it might be helpful to simplify the equation And we can actually do that using the simplify method. We will see that later. And finally, the most awesome feature of the linear equation class, plotting the solution. Yes, we can actually regard the solution of the linear equation as the intersection of two linear functions. For instance, we can create a new linear equation object and then use the plot solution method to plot the solution of the linear equation as the intersection of these two linear functions. So let's see this working in action. First of all, we will need to import the linear equation class from KiwiCalc. Then we can create a new linear equation object. And we need to provide it with the equation. Let's say 2x plus 5 equals 10. This is a very simple equation. We won't provide it with the variables just for simplicity's sake. So first of all, let's see how we can fetch the solution of this linear equation. Here we use the solution property. And we see the solution here. We got 2.5 and we can actually verify that this is the correct solution to the equation. Now let's use the show steps method in order to print out the steps taken in order to reach the solution. The show steps method actually returns a string and we can print it out. And these are the steps that were taken in order to solve this equation. So now let's plot the solution of this linear equation as the intersection of two linear functions. We will do that using the plot solution method. And we can see that this equation is just the intersection between 2x plus 5 and 10.